My name is Jessica and welcome to Makeup Misfit. And today I'm doing a tag video, which I'm so excited to dive into. I do have another one coming up, I believe tomorrow, but this one is the project panning tag. I believe this was originally started by Sarah Rose, but Ruth and a few of her friends, I'll have everything down below. They recreated this one for this year and there's 11 prompts, so I'm very excited to dive into them, answer these the best that I can. I've kind of quickly looked over some of these questions, but not all of them yet. So we'll see how this turns out, but I'm looking forward to getting into this. So like I said, the information on this will be down below, but so will the prompts. So if you're curious or you want to answer these, you can copy and paste them into the comments and answer them that way. If you have a video, please let me know and I will come and check yours out. But let's get into this. So the very first prompt is the easiest category to pan. So for myself, I'm going with bronzer, and more or less just because I find that that is the one category in my collection that visibly gets smaller and smaller over the rest of it. It is my smallest category to date. It was back, I believe, back when I did my makeup inventory at the end of December. My bronzer category just has seemed to be the smallest and it keeps on shrinking. I wear bronzer every single day, but I find for some reason that is just the one thing that I can just kind of work my way through, no problem at all. So I do like to overlap my bronzers and wear more than one at a time, but as soon as I finish one, I pull another one in. So I'm almost always working on at least 2 bronzers. And that's probably a big part of why that category is like shrinking so much. But I enjoy wearing it. It's not difficult for me to reach for or anything like that. So for me, bronzer is something that is just, I know that I can get through. If you haven't noticed, I have not actually ever pulled a bronzer into a project pan because it's always something that I'm working on. So I probably won't ever pull a bronzer into a project pan. And it's for that reason as well, just because it is so easy for me to do. So number 2 is your hardest category to pan. And this one is a bit of a toss-up because blush is very difficult at times. You really don't need a lot of it. Sometimes it's tedious. Sometimes, especially if it's a very pigmented blush, you only need a small amount of it. But I was going to go with blush, but I think I'm going to go with lip product. And not even lip product, more like lipstick, lip color, because lip balms I don't have an issue with whatsoever. I'm almost always using those as well, so those can go pretty quickly. But when it comes to like lipstick, bullet lipstick or liquid lipstick, which I very rarely wear, I don't really wear lip gloss at all. I don't have like any of those lip stain things, so more or less lipstick. I've mentioned it before. It's not something that I ever really like to gravitate towards. For me, it's hard because it's hard for me to reach for. It's as much as I like how they look sometimes, especially on other people, as much as I like that it gives you a little bit of color other than just your blush, for some reason, I don't gravitate towards it. I wish I did, but it's been quite a long time that I've just never been this lip product kind of gal, and that's totally okay. I was actually going to put some on before I filmed today, but I totally forgot and I just sat down to do this, so oh well. But yeah, for some reason, it's just lipstick. And even though I have finished a few lipsticks off over the last however many years, that is the one that just does not seem to shrink at all. Like I don't ever purchase it. Sometimes I'll get a lipstick if it's like a freebie type of thing, a promo code from Sephora, gift with purchase type of thing, but more often than not, like I try not to because I know that they're probably just going to sit there. So unfortunately, lipstick or lip color is just my hardest category, but I wish that it wasn't. So number 3 is a product that you flew through. And for this one, it's going to be more of like a general product. But this, for me, is cream-colored eyeshadows. Now, if you've heard me mention before, I work on my cream-colored eyeshadows from start to finish. So as soon as I start working on it, I completely finish that shadow up before I move on to the next one. And I find I get through them pretty quickly doing it that way. So I haven't kept track in a while But at some point, I had kind of started writing down all of the cream shades that were in my collection, or the ones that I had like most recently finished. And I was trying to keep track of the ones that were actually already finished compared to what was left. And I obviously still had a lot more that were left, but I was surprised to see how many I had actually gone through. Like I said, I haven't kept track in a little while, so I would have to find that notebook and update it just to see where I'm sitting at right now. But for some reason, I find that cream eyeshadows for myself, I use them to set down my lids, and I have no issue doing that whatsoever. Sometimes it's a thinner layer, sometimes it's a heavier layer, just depending on what I'm going for that day. So I find that those cream colored shades for myself just go through my collection like nobody's business. Number 4 is a product that you lost the will because it took so long. Okay, so if you saw my Pan That Face palette last year, I was working on the Too Faced Love Flush Blush palette. And the first 3 shades that I finished were like so good. It was so quick. I had all of the determination in the world, the motivation, the confidence that I was going to finish that palette by the end of the year, and I did not. I finally managed to hit pan on those last 2 shades that were in there. And this year I have that palette in my deck of panning. So I am still working on it, but by the end of last year, I was done. I needed a break. I couldn't keep going with it. I was just over it. I didn't want to even use it at all at the beginning of this year. So I gave up on it for a bit. But when I started a deck of panning, it had been, I think I stopped my Pan That Face palette in November, and I started deck of panning in February. So there was a few months of a break, which is definitely what I needed from that palette. To be able to actually feel like I wanted to work on it again. So those last 2 blushes in that Too Faced Love Flush blush palette made me lose my will, which I'm kind of surprised about, but kind of not at the same time. Number 5 is a product you wouldn't let beat you. Now this one, I was like very, very close to losing my will on this one as well. But I pushed through it, and oh, am I so happy that I did. This was a highlighter that I was panning most of last year, and it was the L'Oreal True Match Lumi highlighter. So I had started using this basically from brand new. And it took me, I can't quite remember when I had finished it, but I had started working on it towards the beginning of the year. And it took a while to hit pan, and I finally did, and I was just so over it. But I continued to work on it, and then I pulled it into my Alice in Wonderland project for the prompt. I can't quite remember what it was, but it was something like a product that you wanted to finish off. And I threw that product in for that prompt because I was so determined to finish it. And it took me quite a while, but I feel like it was definitely before the end of the year, and I started that project in August. So it still took at least, I want to say 2 to 3 months to finish off that highlighter. And oh, was I so happy that I had finally did that. It took so much. I made myself wear it every single day. I could see that pan expanding little by little, and it was like, there was no way after I had finally hit pan on it and wanting to take a break. I may have for like a couple weeks max, but I pulled myself back. I managed to focus on it. And once I had it in my Alice in Wonderland project, the focus came back, everything was there, and I told myself I was going to finish it, and I was going to finish it before the end of 21, and I did, and I'm so happy that I was able to actually do that. So the easiest eyeshadow formula for mattes and shimmers. Now for this one, for myself, I feel like out of what I've used so far, probably ABH. Definitely for the mattes, probably for the shimmer, actually. No, just for the mattes. The shimmers are pretty easy for me as well for the most part, but I've also been using my Huda Mercury Retrograde palette, and those shimmers I've been able to get through pretty quickly as well. That's my Panning Solitaire palette for this year. So I'm gonna go with ABH mattes and at least my Mercury Retrograde shimmers. I have my rose quartz that I have not used yet, so I have no idea if it's exactly the same, but the formula in that Mercury retrograde palette, those shimmers have been probably easier for me to hit pan on than my ABH ones, but those ones would definitely be like runner up. Now the hardest eyeshadow formula for mattes and shimmers, I'm 100% going with Too Faced mattes. Those things are so packed. If you had watched the first few updates for my pan those eyeshadows, I had rolled in You Spicy from the Pumpkin Spice palette by Too Faced, and I had used it a couple handfuls of times, and there was like, you couldn't even see brush strokes in them. Like, you couldn't tell that there was any usage. I think I had used it, was it 12 times? I think I hit 12, and there was like, you couldn't even tell. It looked brand new still. So yeah, 100% I feel like Too Faced mattes have been like my toughest mattes to get through. I'm sure I might have others that are just as close or maybe even a little bit more difficult, but I haven't, because I do have some palettes that I haven't used yet from brands. Like I have some Pat McGrath ones that I haven't reached for whatsoever, and I've heard that those mattes are difficult. But as for the ones that I have actually used, Too Faced would be the hardest matte. And as for shimmers, I think I'm going to stick with Too Faced as well, just because I have gone through and I have hit pan on a couple of Too Faced shimmers and whatnot, but I find it all depends on how I use it, and I have had a difficult time hitting pan on those shimmers as well. I feel like shimmers, for the most part, are a lot easier than mattes, so I mean, there obviously will be some that are more difficult than other brands, but for myself, I think for this prompt, I'm just going to go with Too Faced for both of them. The best alternative use to pan a product faster. Now, I'm not a big fan, I've done it, but I'm not a big fan of using products for a different purpose than what it was actually intended for. But I was using my Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette, the shade Cotton Candy. I had taken that shade in my Alice in Wonderland project to use it in a different way, and I was using it as a blush, and surprisingly that went a lot quicker than what I was expecting. It still took a long time, but it also didn't take as long as it probably would have if I was just to use it on my eyes. So for me, I find using an eyeshadow as a blush, or right now in my deck of panning, I have my Kevyn Aucoin duo. I'm using the brown shade as a contour. That's been starting to create a dip. So I guess using an eyeshadow as a face product would be a quicker way to work through it, even though that's not necessarily what I like to do. I have done it, I am doing it, and for me, I find it works just as well or a little bit better than using it for its intended purpose sometimes. The best project panning tip or trick? Honestly, layering. I layer and like use more than just one blush or bronzer, obviously, as I've mentioned in the beginning of this, or even highlighter. When it comes to face products, for me, layering and using more than just the one. So I'm consistently wearing, like today I'm wearing 2 blushes, I'm wearing 2 or 3 highlighters, but you layer them and then you just blend them out so it still looks seamless. And I enjoy it as well because I find like you can mix different blushes and get a different look, or mix different highlighters and get a different look and a different shade or a different tone or a different whatever it is. So I find it works well for me with bronzer because some bronzer is a little bit too light, some bronzer is a little bit too deep. So if I'm mixing the two together, I can kind of get a tone that's good for me in the wintertime. I'll use a lighter bronzer with a bit of a deeper bronzer and kind of get something that works for me at that time of year, whichever time that might be. So for me, layering multiple of the same product, it seems to help me get through them pretty quickly. So what has project panning taught you? Honestly, a lot. For one, teaches you how to use products in different ways. It teaches you how to get decent use or how long it takes to use up a product. I find like it can also help you determine what kind of formulas you prefer, what kind of formulas you don't. There's been things that I've hate panned, and there's been things that okay, for example, it was my Tarte Princess Avenue bronzer. I remember really wanting that bronzer, and I remember when the palette came out, I didn't buy it, but I wanted it. So I ended up buying a mini of that bronzer, and I was like so happy that I finally purchased it. And as I was using it, I realized that I didn't like it. And I don't know, like I had purchased it a little while ago, and it took some time before I actually got to using it. So there was like a couple of years, maybe like a year or so, where I didn't actually like use the product at all. But I had still had it in my collection. Obviously, the products in my collection I've had for a decent amount of time. And I don't know if it's maybe just like what the product actually was or how I thought I was going to like it back then compared to now. But regardless, I didn't like it as much as I thought I was. And that turned into not necessarily hate panning, but I was just getting tired of it and I just wanted it to be gone. So I'm happy that I had finally finished that one off. But I find like it just teaches you about your collection in general. It teaches you like that not all eyeshadows are going to be the same, or that even the same mattes in the same palette might not even be the same, or the color doesn't come off the way that it does in the pan or the way that you swatch it and it's looking different on your eyes. Like there's just so much to it, and like consistently using the same product over and over again just teaches you about that product in general, or that eyeshadow, or how much you like it or how much you don't like it, or if it's something that you would actually want to repurchase after, or if it's something that you're getting tired of and you're like, I'm over this blush, I don't want to purchase this one anymore once I'm finished with it. So I find like it just teaches you a lot. I don't know if there's one thing that sticks out to me the most right now, but definitely just what I like, what I don't like, how to use things, how to experiment with things, putting together different eye looks that I normally wouldn't have put together, being a little bit more creative. Yeah, that's kind of, I guess, what my biggest thing is. It's helped me become a lot more creative, so it's taught me how to like put looks together that I probably normally wouldn't have. And then the last one, number 11, is the product that you are proudest of panning. Now, part of me wants to go back to my L'Oreal True Match Lumi highlighter just because of how long that had taken. But I think what I might stick with is I have actually finished off a couple of Too Faced eyeshadows. So my Chocolate Bonbons palette, if you have seen what it looked like inside, there was definitely a few shades in there that have completely finished off that I used just as eyeshadow. Especially Divinity, even though it was a cream colored shadow, that took me like 7 or 8 months to finish off, and I'm happy that I finally did that. But for the more like hard pressed shadows, I still managed to finish those off. I'm still working on a couple. One of the shimmers I'm slowly working away at. And just considering how difficult those products are to hit pan on, like I had chosen for that prompt, I'm very happy that I've actually been able to finish off a couple of those eyeshadows, because it just also gives me like that hope that even though the pumpkin spice palette is a little bit difficult right now, there is still hope that I can do it, and I know that I can do it. I just have to be a little bit more determined to do so and put that focus and that effort into it. So that is my answer. Those are my answers for this project panning tag. Let me know what yours are down below, or like I said, if you have a video, let me know, because I would love to go check yours out. What do you think about these, or just my answers in general, I guess? Do you agree with any of them, or do you have a completely opposite idea? I would love to know. So yeah, go check out the other ladies who have been doing this this project panning tag, and like I said, they'll be down below, and I will have another one up tomorrow. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys later. Bye.